All right, so this is a review of the Evo SP gimbal. It is their gimbal for smartphones, and it's the regular version, not the Pro version. Here's the box. And let's take a look first at the external charger. I like to be able to charge the batteries while not having them in the device, so I think that was useful. It's fairly light. The batteries themselves, they recharged pretty quickly. And here the counterweight. So this is for larger smartphones if you were to use an iPhone Plus versus just a regular iPhone. And then the gimbal itself, fairly lightweight, seemed like high quality material, fairly good craftsmanship, easy to hold, easy to maneuver. So let's put the batteries in by unscrewing the cap at the bottom. 1, 2, and then we screw the cap back on. And then you power on the gimbal. Well, actually, you got to put the smartphone in. So let's put this. This is an iPhone 7 Plus. The springs on the grip are pretty tight, so it feels like it's sturdy. It's not just gonna drop your iPhone. And since it is the larger iPhone, let's put the counterweight on. So you just simply screw this on to the right side. We're going to turn the power on. It's a simple press of this button here on the right. And you activate the motors using the 4-way joystick. So you push and hold that down for 2 seconds. You can feel the motors kick in, and then it starts to try to actively balance the phone on the gimbal. And as you can see here, it's already starting to stabilize the iPhone. Let's turn the iPhone screen on. That way you can see what it would look like in typical use. Let's put the camera app on and let's kick it over to video. But the default mode of the gimbal is one in which if you tilt it, the gimbal will eventually kind of drift in that direction. I think they call it heading follow mode. You can see up and down on the joystick actually adjust the tilt of the gimbal. So you do that separately than just using your arm to point in a different direction. And then there's a lock mode where it actually locks the gimbal pointing in a particular direction, and no matter what your movements are, it keeps the camera pointed that way. And here I just deactivated the motor. So you push and hold it for 2 seconds, and then you can hit the power to power everything down. One thing that I noticed from using this with the counterweight is only when the counterweight has been added does the gimbal bounce or kind of knock into itself, which is really inconvenient for packing. So let's talk a little bit about the GoPro mount. It comes with a separate plate and then some mounting screws. Here's the plate. And actually, the mounting screws itself, to mount the GoPro to a plate, you needed to modify it. So I used just a file I got from the garage. And this bracket, I filed away from the top and bottom, just enough material for the bracket to fit around the GoPro 5. You don't have to do this modification for a GoPro 4 or a GoPro 3, GoPro 3 Plus. It was a little bit of a pain, but it made it work just fine, and I didn't feel like it was going to slip out. So now that the bracket fits, you use the screws to tighten the GoPro to this GoPro plate. It's nice that there's a hole cut out in the back for the screen so that you still have access to the LCD screen. And then you basically screw in a screw on the top and a screw on the bottom to hold the GoPro to the plate, which basically mimics your iPhone, right? And then you're going to take that plate and insert it into the gimbal in a similar way to the way that you use your iPhone. Now, one thing to keep in mind is you have to turn the GoPro on before you insert the plate. That was inconvenient. Once you insert the plate, you actually can't reach the power on and off button. And so this is what the GoPro looks like mounted to the plate. And then let's kind of rig the plate into the grip of the gimbal. So you want that camera pointed away from you, the LCD pointed back. You're going to hit the power button, and then you're going to kind of let go and activate the motors again. And you'll feel it kick in right away when the motors activate, and it'll start to stabilize the GoPro and the plate. And so all of the same settings. Some of the things I noticed that were a bit of a concern, the GoPro picked up motor noise. Other people using GoPro 5s with gimbals have noticed this same problem. So I think it's probably more of a GoPro 5 issue. The waterproof casing picks up a lot of these vibrations. Otherwise, I'll play some test footage in a second. There were really no other issues using this GoPro. It was stable. The size of the plate is a bit of a problem, where it's pretty heavy, and there is actually another issue where the head of the gimbal will show up in the footage in the bottom right hand side. Because the GoPro is such a wide angle camera, it actually catches part of the gimbal in the footage. There's a workaround. You can basically just tilt the gimbal so that the GoPro is pointing straight forward, and then you use the whole device horizontally. And there you go, you can see it. You can see one of the motors off to the right hand side of the video footage, and I'll play some footage here in a second that points that out more clearly. So there is a workaround, but it's clear that this device really wasn't designed for such a wide angle GoPro as its primary camera. Honestly, this mounting plate is heavy and fairly inconvenient. So yeah, there you have it. Something else that might be worth noting, I picked up this gimbal because I was looking for the flexibility to use either an iPhone or a GoPro. I figured if the GoPro was mounted to a helmet or was mounted to a bike for another shot, and I happened to have the iPhone on me, why not have a gimbal that can use both rather than one that's dedicated only to a GoPro? Overall, this one does a great job of stabilizing. You can get great footage out of the iPhone and the GoPro. There are some inconveniences for both. On the iPhone side, it's probably the better of the two. It's probably more natural fit for using it with an iPhone. On the GoPro side, I think the biggest issues were the sound, picking up the motor noise for a GoPro 5. Probably not something you'll have an issue with the GoPro 4. And the arm showing up in the footage. And I guess for both the smartphone and the GoPro, the issue of having the counterweight interfere with the GoPro's folding mechanism. That's a pretty big inconvenience.